Black Thoughts Live. My name's Kevin Cox.
Yeah. Get your money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change on me. I never switched up. Been down since day one. Steady social. People change on me.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Dope Black Thoughts Live. My name is Kevin Cox, and I have some very high-powered guests with me today. We have Danielle Kombo, Fabrice Kombo, and Bree Walker. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you.
How are y'all doing?
Great.
Thank you for coming on. So look, I'm super excited that you guys are here. And I have a lot of questions for you. Kombo Enterprises. I mean, y'all are doing big things. And Danielle, I've known you and your husband, Fabrice, for a while, since before I was on the school board, before everybody in Aurora really knew who I was. So talk to us a little bit. Tell us about and Bree. This is my first time meeting you, but thank you for coming on the show also. But talk to us a little bit about Kombo Enterprises and what you all do.
Kombo Enterprises is a conglomerate of companies that operate all around the world. We have interest in several industries: aviation, agriculture, mining, and so we are in many different fields where we are making major investments. And recently, we've been very present in the Congo, my home country, where we have mining interest, and so Kombo Enterprises is kind of like the umbrella under which the corporation under which all of those different interests are incorporated by way of being individual LLCs.
Wait, now before you move forward, let me just clarify. I, Danielle Young Kombo, I am not Kombo Enterprises. That's Bree and Fabrice Kombo. I am DK Global Consulting. So I have my own thing, though I support my husband very much.
Okay.
I just want to clear that up.
Notice that to mention that the consulting company is operating in Africa and into the United States, and completely different than Kombo Enterprises, who's more so into trade and actually asset exchange and intellectual property type exchange, versus her consulting firm.
Right.
Okay,
Mine is more political consulting.
More on the political consulting end of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I have several questions written down here. Omar, a friend of all of us from NAACP, had a couple questions that he sent me. I'm super curious. It sounds like it's going to be great. How can small Black businesses kind of break into doing business in Africa, in Congo in particular, or in Africa in general? What are some of the hurdles or what can help?
Well, we have started the process of taking Kombo Enterprises has made a particular effort to take as many African Americans as we can, including Omar himself, to Africa, so that we can start to change the narrative and the perception and the idea that Africa isn't safe. And so we've been very actively doing that. And as a matter of fact, I think that the result of this is this type of conversations are now possible because there are African Americans that, in your case, you know personally, and such as myself and Danny and Brina, who are going back and forth between the United States and Africa. So the number one answer to your question objectively is the change in perception is one of the things that needs to be affected. What can a small business do is talk to us, really, honestly. Talk to people who are active on the continent, people who understand the duality in culture. They understand the culture in Africa, and they also integrated here enough to understand the culture in the African American community, and from there, the translation into businesses is that much more possible. In a practical sense, if one wanted to, let's say, invest in diamond mining, for instance, it has a certain cost. You would come and be exposed to what the risks are, what are the opportunities, the return on investment is out, is out of this world, but it's kind of like mitigated by the risk, right? So mitigating the risk becomes kind of what a company such as Kombo Enterprise does for a potential investor. We create an environment, we show you what that environment is, and we say, here's how you can invest your money in a way that one, you'll be protected, but two, here's how the return on investment, and here's the smoothing of the environment that we have done, and that's why you should come on our platform. But if you find another platform that does it somewhere else, more power to you. We clearly are pushing our own agenda, but we're definitely not alone in this space.
I just want to, is it okay if I interrupt? Sure. I just want to say that to small business, individual, anyone can really find opportunities in Africa. We're more familiar with Congo just because of my husband Fabrice's background. And so we've been and had the opportunity to spend a lot of time there and meet with leaders and business owners. And there's just so much that has been denied to us as African Americans, which I'm a real proponent of our empowerment as a people. But also I think that to do that as African Americans, we must return to the source. And so getting the opportunity to spend time in the Congo and get to know the land and have the food and see an African leader or a Black person who's the leader of their country in their own country it was absolutely incredible, and it's something that we should all experience. But in terms of small businesses and investment, again, I cannot stress enough that there's a lot of opportunity, but you do have to have connections, just for your own safety, for your, for protection of your assets. You want to have people who understand the lay of the land. And so that's where an organization or company like Kombo Enterprises or my consulting company, which also consults on business as well, not just politics, can help. So whether you want to go to any other nation, whether it's Ghana or Nigeria or Congo, Gabon, there's a lot of opportunity. You just need to make sure that you have the right connections in place to do the work that you want to do. And anyone really can. There's really a low barrier of entry in a lot of aspects of investment. If you want to own land, it's a lot cheaper than if you were to try and purchase land in the United States. And just for your own cultural significance and the meaning of that to who we are as a people, owning land back home in Africa, I think it does something to your mindset about the world and where you fit in it. So that's kind of been my experience. But I think Bree has also had the opportunity to also think and consider some businesses of her own in art and culture.
Yeah, no, I think that there's been a certain narrative that's always been given to us as African Americans that, there isn't much history to us given, especially learning here in a Western culture. There isn't much history given to us about what happened prior to, let's say, that colonial era where slavery takes place. We're only told that there's slavery and then there's civil rights movement, and that's all the history that we have. And there's an immense background that we're unaware of as African Americans that existed for empires in Africa. And I'm had the pleasure so far to start making those connections to bring that narrative, or try to bring light to that type of narrative here in the U.S. by, bringing arts and different artifacts that are pre-colonial to the U.S. here. So it's been an exciting process. So those are just, and then again, another facet in which you can find a place to invest, or a place to find business, or a place to do something of note for yourself to create some form of continuous identity that we are lacking here in the U.S. So,
one of the things that I noticed when I went the first time, I noticed that there were so many people of different cultural backgrounds in the Congo, a French-speaking country, which a lot of African Americans aren't really aware of. Like, we know Ghana, we know Nigeria, the English-speaking country, South Africa, but we don't really know about the Francophone countries, the French-speaking countries. There's countries that speak Portuguese, countries that speak Arabic. So there's a lot of diversity across the continent. But when I was in the Congo specifically, what I saw there, I saw Chinese, so Asian people, particularly of a Chinese background, Middle Eastern people, a lot of Lebanese, Russian, white Americans, everyone investing, having businesses, owning like malls, and owning a lot of real estate, having contracts to help develop the infrastructure, and no black faces, no African Americans, no black people from the West were there. We have so much to offer, and I know that we really want to try and get our products on the shelves of like Walmart and Target, but I think we need to start changing our mindset around where we can distribute the things that we create, particularly on the continent where natural hair care products are needed, where different types of apparel, things like that we are starting these businesses, and they're small, and we're stuck in our in our own environment. Really, we don't have the opportunity to expand. We can really take those types of gifts that we have to offer over to Africa and really build wealth and create generational wealth if we think differently about what the opportunities there.
So the philosophical underpinning narrative under Kombo Enterprise, which is, in my perspective, or at least from my perspective, the overarching underpinning narrative, right? Which is African Americans needs to look at Africa like something that belongs to them just as much as it belongs to me. And the difference between those two school of thoughts are at best psychological, and I can prove it, right? So you have my son, for instance, who never set foot yet to the Congo. Mom is Bree, they've gone multiple times, but the kids never been. So my son is born from an African-American mother and an African father in the US, never set foot on the continent. There is no difference between my son and, let's say, your son, if you have one, right? Mm-hmm. So there is no difference between the two, but yet my son feels in his heart that not only Congo belongs to him, but he owes a debt of gratitude, and he owes his intellect, he owes his identity to the Congo, but yet he's here with your son in the same space. See? So from that understanding of the need for Africa to reconcile with itself, we built Kombo Enterprise with that in mind. We are invested in industries that can have an overarching impact on the betterment of African Americans and the reconnection of African Americans to Africa. So we are in, like I said, aviation, but we are in private jets in aviation, right? That's the segment of the aviation sector that we are involved in the most, right? We are now expanding to larger carriers and airlines and things like that, only because we're now penetrating the African market. But as far as the US is concerned, we are in private jets. We are in agriculture. We are in entertainment. We are in industries that ultimately will help the flow of information and goods and people between Africa in the United States. So everything that we're going to say tonight is stemming from that viewpoint.
I'm loving that you're talking about changing the psychology of the relationship between the continent and African Americans. You're speaking to my heart. Like, I'm trying not to just smile ear to ear the whole time you're talking about it. Look, I just served my time on the school board, and I've had multiple conversations with our superintendent, our chief academic officers, at the time, both Black men, and talked about the fact that we need to update our history curriculum to include pre-colonial information about our ancestry and the many successes. We had this conversation today in my household about how my child is going to school and going to be involved in a play as a slave. And like, is that the only thing we're going to talk about in Black History Month? Slavery,
Right.
Martin Luther King. Like, there is so much more.
Before slavery, exactly. We were
yes, there's a wealth of information.
And
Yeah.
I bring a unique perspective to this conversation, because I have been married to an African American woman for over like almost 2 decades now, right? So my understanding of the culture is rooted in that length of time, right? So I have that much perspective and that much comparative advantage to the African culture to see what's lacking and where. Why is it that we are poor in Africa, and why is it that we're still poor in the West? Why is it that only a few of us in the West, as African Americans, can generate a certain amount of wealth? Why is it that it's always entertainment, and why is it that it's always limited? Why does it always feel like it's confined? And what are the opportunities, and where is the relationship between the nations, the African nation, the European nations, and the United States? Where are those relationships? And how much restraint do we have as a generation into advancing the Black people, right? In comparison, for example, to the people in the 60s, the constraints were different, right? What are the constraints now, but what does the new environment allows for? Kombo Enterprises specialize into figuring out those crevices.
But to get to this place, I mean, you have to think about the past and how it's not like this is new. We've always been parallel to one another, and in times in tandem with the continent as African Americans, as Afro descendants, right? We've always been that way in terms of our independence, our sovereignty. When Africa started gaining independence, we started gaining our civil rights and equal rights in the United States and in the West. So it was always in correlation with one another. We've never been separate as we perceive ourselves to be now. Like, I've heard other African Americans say, I'm not, I'm Black, I'm not African, I have no identity or I don't identify with Africa in any way, right? But that's something that's been, it's been perpetuated, it's been put forth in our education system. It's been, taken away from us. And if we really have lost, we've lost. So now we have something to gain. And we are more aware of what we're missing. We're more aware of like the history. We're starting to understand like Mansa Musa, all of these powerful, Queen Nzinga, all of these powerful leaders who existed before colonization, and who it represents who we are as a people. And also learning just that the slaves didn't peacefully go down. Like there was a lot of fighting and, a lot of planning and trying to plot to get out of our situation. So when I think about where we are today as a people and what we did in support of the African liberation movement, in support of our own movement, I think now we need to shift more of that energy towards economic sovereignty, towards economic empowerment. Because we've come together on the social issues. I remember marching for Nelson Mandela's freedom when I was like 7 or 8 years old in Los Angeles. I remember, discussions around what was going on in African countries to a degree in my own African American experience. So we've always been a part of this history, And I think we didn't really know what to do with that influence once, Nelson Mandela was free, or once, all of the things that have transpired since then, just thinking about how we can strategize as a people together, as African Americans, as Afro descendants and Africans. How can we bridge that gap economically? I think that that's where our force can really make a difference in our experience, our lived experience, and for future generations as well.
I mean, it's almost it's an obvious state of affair if you're really trying to solve the problem. If you approach the black question from a how can we solve the problem, you're going to start identifying the things that are disconnected. For instance, you have African Americans with political clout in the most powerful nation in the world, right? But with no money. Okay, so what do you have across the way? You have the richest country in the world with the most resources, which is the Congo. $24 trillion worth of
Enormous
natural resources. The land is crazy, but no political clout whatsoever, right? One of the poorest countries in the world. So you have the people with the power of no money and the people with the money with no power, okay? So if we could somehow, make the obvious what it needs to be, we believe that the environment allows for it. We believe it's novel in that way. It's not something that couldn't have happened before, but it's something that couldn't have happened before.
I think that's what, for me, in my experience, that was the most significant portion about now, is that we are in a position to be so open socially to reconnecting with ourselves and finding some sense of identity with a certain culture, because it's similar to an example, if you found out that your great-great-grandfather was Martin Luther King, immediately something in you will force you to make different decisions. You'll be a little bit more empowered just because you have that little bit of knowledge left. And I think that culturally in Africa, they have that history. They have that knowledge. They as a people and as a culture know how they vibe together. And even ourselves, we see so many different similarities within ourselves and also in those African cultures. As a matter of fact, we're very expressive people as African Americans. We project our voices. We are very prominent and dominant, and the same features and characteristics you can find in a lot of the African cultures, because we are, again, descendants from that. So just having that little bit of knowledge is what can empower so many others. And I think that even here, because we have those same characteristics and similarities, we have utilized them here as African Americans. We hold high positions of power, as far as even the vice president now. We have a female African American vice president of the United States, one of the most richest nations there are, and we had a black president as well. And so I think in that way, marrying those two cultures, like what we've been saying before, it allows us to have that cultural identity and empowerment from their perspective. So that relationship and that the communing itself of giving what they have with that spiritual connection, but also us allowing us to expand and give our expertise in what we know and what we've developed here. We can, how the African Americans can help somehow guide their global systemic understanding of the paradigm that they have.
And by so doing, survive. By so doing, thrive. By so doing, reconnect with oneself and stop seeing the disconnect there is between our people. I had to experience that in my own life so that it could be true. I am married to an African American woman. We have African American kids. So I love the confusion. I love the fact that it's hard to pin down, because what I want to force you to say is that they're African with a big A. That's what it really means. That's what it really is, right? So from that perspective, we can reunite again. We can be one again. That's why I believe that's the real secret of our success.
Well, I don't want to, mislead people who are interested in marrying between two different cultures, because It's not easy. It took a lot of work and patience and time on both our parts to make this work. And so it was a lot of prayer, a lot of support.
and that's what's going to be required of all of us to
Right, exactly. So that's the point I was trying to make. It's like, this is a marriage. That is one aspect of things. But when you are going in to observe and be a part of or learn to be a part of a new culture, there are going to be some growing pains. You got to learn your way. You got to understand. Yeah, I mean, there's a language barrier, all those things. So I don't want to put rose-colored glasses on anyone's face. Like, I want you to understand there's going to be different challenges. There's going to be delays. We took an African-American brother, and he was like, why do we have clocks in the Congo? Like, we should just not, because there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of folks are on super Black people time, right? So it's different, so you got to understand. So it's just you have to be flexible and give grace, knowing that it's very new for you. It's foreign, and it's going to take some time to adjust. But you'll find yourself understanding different words in the language, which is like amazing, right? To understand an African language, just because of so much, we lost so much, but also just you start to vibe. You start to see people who look like you and your family members in the Congo, because so many of us are actually from the Congo. There's a significant cultural phenomenon there with us, that we have this link. Especially if you have any ancestors from Louisiana, the Congo Square exists today in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And so that's like where the original is. A lot of our people are from the South. So just thinking about that, what that means to our population, how much we are connected to the land. There's a name of a city that's named after a prominent prominent person from the Congo from that time. Is it Tampa? It's Tampa. Yeah. Which is so that is named after that person, and there's a historical significance there. I mean, there's so much of a connection to the Congo, and we just completely overlook it as African Americans because it's a French-speaking country. So we've got to get out of that mindset that we can only explore areas where we feel the most comfortable in.
So Kevin, I'll give you an example. If you lived in Mambela and somebody comes and snatch you, and then they take you to Mexico, all right?
Mm-hmm.
10, 20 years later, you find out that you were taken, that you're not Mexican, that you don't speak Spanish, whatever. You come back, and then you find out that the land that was in Mombelo now is an upscale area, and the land is worth, let's say, $1 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to waste your time figuring out how many ways you don't speak the language to claim your house? That's what African Americans are doing. They're wasting their time trying to figure out how many ways they're not African, when Africa is where all the money really is. So I'm being very serious. Like,
yes, sir.
To answer your question even further, how does a young business person or a business person and enter this space? For instance, Congo has diamonds. I'm gonna keep it very basic. Congo has diamonds. The United States consume diamonds. Who in the United States consume diamonds? Black folk. Bling bling and all that. So you have the producer being us, the buyers being us, but everybody in between is not us. We just lose the diamond.
They're doing all the negotiations. They're making all the deals. They don't look like us.
So you want to enter a diamond mine, you can absolutely own a diamond mine. So if we can elevate the conversation from the Kumbaya kind of like chapter of it, which is we're the same people, we need to wake up and get it, right? Mm-hmm. Second layer above that is that what does that mean money-wise? What does that mean today for your pocket today? Okay.
Big things.
Let me give you an example. The communication system that we're using right now use this mineral called coltan, right? You have coltan, you have cobalt. Those are rare earth minerals that are seldom in the world, but can be found in massive quantities in the Congo. How is it that we can stand outside the Apple store to buy a cell phone
Yes.
that cost us $1,800. But the most expensive item in it, besides the intellectual property of designing it, is the coltan in it. And the coltan is what what you can buy and trade in the Congo. So we have gone to the Congo, created a mining company. We are talking to HBCUs, trying to fund the creation of faculties that are going to teach African Americans the trade of rare earth minerals. We're trying to broker deals from large companies like Boeing and the Congo, trying to see if Boeing could source its rare earth minerals directly from Africa, thus creating jobs on the African front. So convincing African Americans is kind of why we agreed to come on the podcast, and making them understand that it's really their mindset that is the limitation, not the information. So when you ask me how, yes, I can give you my how, but the continent has 152 countries. So the first thing I need to unlock in your spirit is the understanding that you've been snatched from your house and your house is worth $24 trillion. Wake up, come back, and let's do this.
That's right. All those, you were a candidate once. You had to fundraise for your campaign, right? Where's the Africa PAC? Where's the organizations that can help support our political leaders who would be good to help push policy forward that would actually benefit our people? So it's just thinking in that regard of all the institutions that we have that we're fighting for or fighting against or trying to get in, where we fit in, pull our seat up to the table and all that. We have our own table. We really do. We just need to see it. We just need to recognize it for what it is.
Okay, listen. This is such a big, powerful conversation. I'm getting totally entranced by everything you're talking about. You're blowing my mind repeatedly. I want to go over some of the comments that we're getting in Facebook right now, the engagement. Okay, so here's one right here. To understand the state of the continent of Africa, we must understand on a cellular level the system of racism and white supremacy and how it circumvents the world. We must understand the role of colonization and Westernism on the continued systematic oppression of people of African descent across the globe. There are 9 channels through which the system of racism functions. We can't dismantle a system if we don't understand how it functions and succeeds. So while, yes, investing in Africa, and I can continue here, you can take out the screen while investing in Africa. Well, okay, I don't have access to the full comment, but what it's giving a really comprehensive thought process about what's been holding us back. And that's what the largest thing that I appreciate about this conversation is you're talking about economic development, which is, look, I'm just now getting my mind wrapped around what economic development looks like, overcoming white supremacy and whatnot. And what you're saying is if you want that economic development in your community, get connected to yourself, to your roots, get connected to the continent, get connected to your home. And I want to say thank you for bringing that message to us, because it's about, it's about money, but it's actually not about money. It's actually about getting to our soul. You said that you need to feel it in your spirit, and like I'm feeling that in my spirit as we're having this conversation. So one, let's speak on behalf of DBT. Thank you for coming on our podcast. And we need to do things with you guys. We need to get to the continent and see what kind of opportunities there are for us, even if it's just looking and seeing and witnessing and using our voices to tell the story. No matter what, we have to.
Omar, you just the scheduling wouldn't work.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All day long. And so, Omar, also a member of DBT, he did a lot of work with the Aurora branch of the NAACP to bring an economic development center into the chapter. Absolutely. So that's kind of where I'm like, I feel like we're starting to make these steps. And then I'm hearing, Danielle, you're going to become a president of a branch.
Well, yes, we have been working on that and to get some help down in Douglas County. I'm sure you've been hearing about all the turmoil and craziness we have going on down here with our school board, our elections. Now there's an investigation. So I think that NAACP has a place here and needs to be here firmly. The NAACP as an organization is the largest NGO in the world. There is a lot of power in those numbers and in that reach. And I think that if we did do more of what President Omar Montgomery is doing in Aurora in terms of having economic development centers and opportunities for us to learn about finance and credit and how to get business loans and actually sustain our businesses and expand our businesses, I think we could really, help and empower our people, create jobs in our communities. There's a lot of opportunity there. I would love for the NAACP, the national organization, to send I think the president should actually, President Johnson should take a trip to the Congo. I think that we have to get our most prominent leaders, our elite, our thought leaders, folks who are thinking about what it means to build a nation of people who will be able to sustain themselves. When you think about Black wealth, what does that mean? What does that look like? Why is it that the dollar is going so quickly out of our community, unlike our adjacent, brothers and sisters in the Asian American community and the Latino community? We just have to think differently about what that means. And I think that there's so much opportunity on the continent, particularly in the Congo. We have to take advantage of this and strike while the iron is hot. Like Africa is hot right now. Everybody is going but us. And we
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Okay. So you talked about what opportunities there are. Talk to me about what kind of challenge. Well, you actually addressed that. What kind of challenges we could experience. So I'll move on. What are some of the licenses, certifications, requirements that are going to be needed to successfully, get started, get a foothold?
Well,
depends on the industry, right?
We
depends on the industry, of course.
Consulting firm has managed to convince the leadership in the Congo to create the very first African American house in the Congo. It's going to act as a mitigator of all the challenges that we all know about. So
right, the visa that you need to get to enter into the Congo. How you can operate a business, start a business, all the legalities, all of that information, those resources would be, help provided to you. Things of that nature, cultural engagement as well. In addition to the business aspect of the things, we were able to go on somewhat of a pilgrimage to Central Congo, which is where a lot of African Americans, that's the tribe that was mostly the people were taken from in the Congo. And we went to Zongo. So it's a huge river that goes into a powerful waterfall. And there's also some spiritual significance there as well. The story goes that when the colonizers came, the spiritual deities, the practices of the tribe of the Congo, the original people of the Congo, was thrown into the river. So that's one. And then there's also a prophet by the name of Simon Kimbangu, who would sit and meditate on by the waterfall. And so we got to go and sit where he sat and got to experience just the energy there is unreal. And it's this beautiful resort. So it's things like that we are so unaware of as people here. The tourism, the spiritual aspect, the cultural significance. I think that is the part that is so rich, that is worth more than any diamonds or gold or cobalt or coltan. It's that experience, the beauty, the nature there, everything is there. It's like the Garden of Eden in the Bible. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
It's beautiful, but the money is just as good.
The green is good, yes. And we really do as a people need to reclaim our birthright. We really do need to take some type of control over our own destiny. And the way to do that is to build wealth.
And so to kind of recap, all of those types of resources and information and even, experiences will try to make sure that all that is incorporated in that cultural center. So that way there are complete access to that, complete transparency, and make sure that there aren't that many language barriers, and try to beat most of those people to what those barriers would be, so that way they're informed when they arrive.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, in addition to being, you know, a business center and cultural center, it's about, you know, it's about empowerment. I mean, we have to think outside of the box, and I think that we have to think outside of just our four corners.
So licenses, it costs $1 million, $1.5 million to operate a cobalt mine. The diamond mine business is a lot more liberal, so you can, you know, with a couple $100,000, you can already have your own operation, your own guys, and whatever stone come out, you bring to New York. And clearly, if you have the means to cover my fee, I fly you private, you bring your stones, you sell them. We can even guide you onto who to sell them to. It'd be interesting to speak to African American record labels so that they would push their artists to push the industry back into the mainstream.
Their own diamonds also.
Pretty much.
And the film industry as well. There's opportunity there. I mean, Tyler Perry could have a studio in Congo and create all types of great art. So there's significant opportunity. What about like the athletics? I know the NBA is doing some work.
Yeah, the NBA is doing. They're building two camps. They working towards NBA Africa. Everybody's waking up to this. So African Americans who understand the tide of the world. If we ourselves are kind of like a new animal in the zoo. There were no.
And listen, I love UFC, mixed martial arts. We have Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champion. You have Israel Adesanya, I believe he's middleweight, and you have Kamaru Usman, who's I can't remember the weight classes exactly. I think it's 155, 170, and then 200 and up. Taking over. That African blood is there's something about it. There's something they got to stop. There's something they got to try to hold back, and they're not quite able to do it. They just being the royal they. There's a lot of power in this conversation. There's a lot of power in the thought process being changed. And again, you know, we're talking about economic development, and what you're saying is basically that's the easy part. Like you have to change.
I mean, there's real estate, land ownership is the key to our empowerment. Period. But land is not, you know, what is the average cost of like a piece of land that you can build a home on?
Well, unfortunately for all of the parties involved, the non-African have gone to Africa so much that now the property cost is really, really high in major cities. However, it is our intention to build a city, and I'm not talking about building a city like Akon. I think that Akon is building a music video city. I don't think that the brother is as serious as he should be, particularly with a subject that is sensitive. I believe that we could build a city on the coast of the Congo, what will ultimately become a free, what do you call it? A free zone?
Free trade zone.
A free trade zone for African Americans, right? So you have a city on the coast of the Congo that have a bunch of resorts and a bunch of hotels, and it's a booming city because African Americans are flying from the US into the Congo and trying to figure out where to invest, how to do it, and with whom. So the first step in that process was that house that that DK Consulting managed to secure. And then on the back end of it is how many ways can we, if we cannot speak any linguistic, you know, in any linguistic way, we definitely can talk dollar, right? So let's start there. Let's start economically. Let's encourage people to build platforms like Amazon. Like we were pushing a project where we would build a platform that would kind of like mimic Amazon, but just for Black product across the world. So you could buy from Brazil, you could buy from the Bronx, you could buy from the Congo, but it's all Black products. So if you have Black hair and you go on this particular platform, you could actually find all the different variables of hair, people with Bree's texture, or Danny's hair texture, and then so on and so forth. And someone in Africa being able to see how many different variables of black and how it evolved and how it transformed through the travels of all these people is something that economically is $1 billion of its own, just because of our consuming power.
There's a lot of power in that. In addition to the touristic, in addition to tourism and ownership, land ownership, things like that. There's also retirement. My mom and like her friends were talking about moving to countries like Costa Rica and Mexico, and I was like, wait a minute, our people are going to retire, right? And it's just because it's so expensive to retire now. I mean, people can't retire with dignity, and so thinking about creating retirement communities for our elders. And I had a conversation with some leadership at Howard University, because they have one of the top African-American medical schools at an HBCU in the country, and talked about having a university hospital system that's through Howard's with training the physicians and the nurses, having exchange programs with our students at HBCUs here. Hang on one moment.
Excuse me.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
It's live, y'all.
Oh, good.
But thinking about how we can help our people live in dignity, and also lowering the barrier to entry for folks who may not have an upper middle class income. Maybe they have a middle class income, but are thinking about retirement, how they can do that. I think having being able to live in an area where there's a low cost of living, where it's safe, where you have all the amenities that you need, in breathing that good African air and having that humidity that makes us look young, and all those things helps us live longer. Eating natural foods that are we don't have to call them organic. It's grew there that way, right? Everything grows there. That's another thing. Just thinking about all those things, that natural living and having community, which is so important to us. Culturally, I feel like we've been affected by our Western, influence, with being no longer having real communities that look out for each other, take care of our elders. If you see someone in need, you help them out. We still have the pockets, but not like it used to be in like our parents' generation and before that. So getting back to that notion and helping our people retire in dignity, helping our families live a better quality of life, building schools there. I would love to see Spelman have an all-girls preparatory school in the Congo, for instance, and have that exchange. Again, our students are getting that cultural exchange. So we're all winning. We're all benefiting from these engagements. So just thinking about, there's so much to this, right? But there's, everything from infrastructure development, our engineers, our young people who are having problems finding careers here or getting jobs, getting into those Fortune 500 companies. They could be having startups in Africa. They could be working for, big companies like that in Africa and in Congo, where Congo needs everything. We have a lot to give. We got to put those things together.
I think that
We got to put them together. And like you said, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bree.
No, I'm so sorry. I was just going to highlight the fact that I think that another industry that doesn't get a lot of light is even the medical industry. We don't have Africa, specifically in Congo, doesn't have the infrastructure to the extent that we have the knowledge. In that, it does include the conversations that have been had with those types of historically Black colleges and universities about how to create different platforms for students to try to learn and have their clinicals done in a different country like Congo, where they do need those types of resources and need that knowledge. So there's several ways to try to commune on those ways.
And potentially go to school for free, and all the things that come along with that, the things that really cause us to live in poverty or not be able to leave our parents' home because we're in so much student debt. And thinking about how we can, talk to the Biden administration about, directly about what it is that we would like to accomplish as a people, and having a real Black agenda that is reflecting upon how we are living in these times, so that we can move our people forward.
Yeah, don't check a box for me. I want you to make a real change for me. And let me bring a comment in. It was on the screen earlier. Noble Trinity Media, the subject of monetary change. How does our money go far? And what type of exchange rate? Like, how far does our money go?
So the dollar is used in Congo. Go ahead.
Because of the scarcity of the not scarcity. The system, the economic system in Congo is such that the dollar, dollar for dollar, you could use the dollar there. But all it means is that it's a very poor country, because it means that things are very, very expensive if they cost the same to a country that don't produce the same amount of dollars. So the comparison is what is the comparison?
So the currency is $1 to 2,000 Congolese franc. So and let's not go too far in that conversation just yet, because that still is a significant amount of money when it comes to the locals there. So when it comes to their buying power, what that means, so yes, your dollar can go a lot further when it means creating economic stability there for people there. Which is, creating a different buying power there as well, creating your own system of business. However, yes, the American or the US dollar is still what is utilized. So there are measurements. Let's say if you are going to a very nice hotel, they are letting you know that they do use the US dollar. So therefore things are priced in a very US way.
Right.
So it still is, in comparison, it still is not, even close to something as high end that you would find as far as cost is concerned, as high end as you would pay in, let's say, LA.
Or
you
Denver,
won't see here in Denver. So you won't see yourself overspending like you do here in the US. However, they will price appropriately if they know that you are coming and have the money. But again, to reiterate, there is a big difference between $1 and 2,000 Congolese franc and what that does for the local economy.
Right.
I like that you put it that way in the words in the terminology of impact to the economy in the Congo, as opposed to what benefit it can just give me. Is if I go down there and I just want to get rich, like what can I do that benefits me and benefits the Congo?
By going and by investing and by owning a business and by owning a mine and by doing those things, you're going to create jobs, and that's the most direct and most visible and most impactful thing you can possibly do is go reclaim your birthright. I am that much more. You have to understand the way this whole thing starts is Danny and I are watching Eddie Griffin on TV, right? Eddie is making these jokes, and
this was a long time ago.
how many years?
At least 10, maybe more. Yeah.
Right? So 10 years ago, maybe more.
Maybe more, yeah.
It's gotta be more.
Maybe
It's gotta be more, yeah.
Somewhere.
Very long
It
time
was
ago.
hot at that time. Yeah.
Very long time ago, Eddie is really on top of his game. He closes one of his specials, and I think it's Voodoo Child. And at the end, he says, "Not one African, right, with a spear on a canoe came to get us." He was being, in his own way, funny, but I didn't laugh at all because I felt like he was talking to me. So I was, at that point, told what my mission in life was. I am the black man with the spear and the canoe.
Right.
My canoe is just a jet, please. But I'm being very serious. That's what has started this whole thing off. Is no, we did not sit and celebrate that our children or our brothers or our fathers were taken. No, there is no human being that would celebrate after their loved ones have been snatched. So whatever narrative the people who have perpetrated this have gone to change the narrative and made it somehow that somebody was selling somebody else. It doesn't change the hurt of the people that lost their people. I just believe
think
that
what
there
that
is
does, if you separate the African Americans from the Africans in the continent, you've created a minority that actually isn't truly a minority.
That's it.
You separated them in the mind. And it reminds me of a Nelson Mandela quote. He was on an episode of Oprah Winfrey probably about 20 years ago, and she still had like the Hillary Clinton type of haircut and everything. And Nelson Mandela I think he was recently released, and he was talking about, when he was locked up, he had a lot of anger and frustration, but he had to overcome his emotion, and the way he could win was with his mind. And that's what's echoing to me through this conversation that you're talking about. We need to change the mindset. We need to change the psychology and get into our spirit of going home and reclaiming our birthright, what we were born with, what goes through our blood right now. And when we do exchange money, and there is an advantage, it can benefit the community of our brothers and sisters, not just we can get rich or we can get loaded and we can buy a private jet. You're not even talking about that. We're talking about literally building up the Black economy in the continent and in America. That's right. What I truly love about this conversation.
It's not taking away from our history here, because we have created a rich history as African Americans, as being a part of American culture. We are Americans. And so I'm not saying we need to abandon everything and leave. I'm just saying that we need to take advantage of all of our opportunities. We need to make everything working in our favor.
Yep.
And one thing I really like that you said, especially since you are in education and you've reached the heights that you have within your career, I think that even there's I don't know if there's a famous historian, his name is Akala, and he's from the Caribbean era, where they have a completely different understanding because they weren't subject to the colonial Western education system. And so to the extent in which U.S. citizens or African Americans are. And so with him and him knowing what his culture was beforehand, he had attended a Pan-African Saturday school. And so that alone allowed him to approach life differently and his life experiences. And so now he speaks and has an honorary degree from Oxford University, and how difficult that is from someone who comes from such a background lets you know the difference that makes to just be educated differently. And so I love the idea that you mentioned before of trying to create a system or a curriculum that does highlight a lot of the African history and ourselves as African Americans, because we aren't told the entire story. And that was from an era that it exists now, but not to the extent it exists now. And that I think the internet itself is what changed so much of the parameters and how we are able to access certain different pieces of information of our own history. But it does require us to create some form of platform that we can experience our own history and understand it from that way. So just food for thought for you and what that means and how you can apply
That's
that.
totally apropos for this moment. We're running right up on an hour. As I think about this conversation, you've done nothing but drop expanding over and over again. This is a conversation that needs to continue. One, I need to go ahead and ask you guys, you need to come back on the show. I'm not even asking, I'm telling you. You got to come back on. We got to have you back. This entire episode has been a dope Black thought. It's just been changing the mindset, changing the narrative. And I want to go further in depth with you, with more of our co-hosts. We might need you to come back on, bi-monthly or something like that. We definitely need to be in close contact with you. So I want to give you the utmost thanks and appreciation and gratitude for coming on and blessing us with your what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing for the community, because we don't give people their roses enough. So thank you for what you're doing for the community, and thanks for dropping this information on us. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. You guys have any final thing you want to say? Give me your website, give me your contact information.
When are you coming out?
Let's talk. Let's talk. Quite frankly, you know, I've been looking at some land also. So let's talk for real.
So the one thought I want to leave you with is we are very serious about building an African American free zone in the Congo. We are very serious about involving as many African Americans as we can in the mining industry. The consequences are going to affect the many, and we are focused. Kombo Enterprises is focused on the many.
From education to healthcare to business, land ownership, opportunities for our children to learn and be educated about how to trade, how to mine, how to own mining companies, all of the above. There's just so much opportunity, and I'm looking forward to having more discussion around all of this.
I think that there's also room to sincerely thank you guys as well. This platform is incredible.
Thank you so much.
We need more platforms that are willing to share this message.
Absolutely.
And create this narrative. So it's spreading the message as far as possible with the most amount of people we can is also a part of this agenda, and one of the most important pieces as well. So,
and you're talking to the Vice President of Events of Kombo Enterprises and the CEO, and of course, I'm my own CEO of DK Global Consulting. What is my website is dkglobalconsultingllc.com. What is the Kombo Enterprises?
Kombo Jets is what the company we drive forward the most, and KomboJets.com.
Kombo Jets.
Yeah.
I like it. Good Lord, y'all. I mean, look, I was ready.
Much love, LOVE.
Yes, much love. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll be signing off.
A-D-D-I-C-T-E-D. What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, then hit back in it. Calling me an Uber just to hit back in it. Hit the cash out like fate, I send it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it. Divide and gravitate. Taste that wet emoji got me higher out of space.